It's amazing how James Harden has just kind of like seamlessly like handled everything that's come his way. And last night he was a facilitator early on in the game, and guys were not making their shots, and they were in danger of losing this game. And then all of a sudden the fourth quarter comes around and he takes over. And you know who the alpha male on the court is. You know who the guy who wants the ball in his hands, who's going to make the decisions, and who's going to make the key shots. I was wondering how this whole thing was going to play out, and last night I think I saw it, and that was the fact that he barely shot the ball at all in the first half.
Sure. Yep.
He had the ball in his hands a lot, but he was
really quiet.
And he was getting the ball to his teammates and things of that nature. But then all of a sudden, when you're thinking, they're going to lose this game, this is going to be great, he takes the game over. And even though Kyrie played 40 minutes, I'm like, where? He was almost invisible.
Yeah, so there's a couple examples now. First, when Kyrie was still out in his unexcused absence that I guess turned into an excused absence, and James Harden joined the team. Remember how good the Nets were those first couple games with James Harden and the back-to-back triple-doubles, and you said, how's Kyrie going to fit into this thing? So that was two examples there without him. And then last night, I mean, when they needed somebody to go to, it was James Harden. And it was him in the fourth quarter. He was great. There was even that 1 3-pointer where James Harden gets the ball to Kyrie. Kyrie runs into two defenders, then right back out to James Harden, bang, with the three. So to me, I mean, when you really look at the composition of this team to this point, it's Kevin Durant and it's James Harden, and Kyrie Irving is still trying to fit in. That's the way it feels to me when I am watching this, which is interesting because back when this whole thing started, it was Kyrie driven. It was Kyrie Irving, the Nets fan. Kyrie Irving, who grew up in New Jersey with the Nets. Kyrie, who wanted Kevin Durant to join him there. And now all of a sudden, he's a guy that's sort of looking for a seat in the musical chairs of how it's going to work out. And we might be saying at the end of this thing that Kyrie Irving being on this team with James Harden now being a part of it is superfluous. It's not necessary. You don't really even need the guy. So, yeah, that is going to be fascinating to watch. But, James Harden, as much as we have crushed him for his behavior, and he earned every bit of that, and he was someone who forced his way out in a way that was really, really, just off-putting to a lot of sports fans and his own teammates and everybody around the league. He's come to Brooklyn, and he's playing. He's been great.
He has been great. He's been playing, and last night they needed him. They needed him to show up in the fourth quarter. And again, I almost feel like listening to him after the game last night, it's almost like he was trying to make a point that he wasn't going to shoot in the first half.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. I can never tell with these guys. It's just so hard to read every little thing that they're saying and try to make something out of it or try to make more out of it than there should be. But it was like he wanted to just give the ball to his teammates and show everybody that he was going to be unselfish. Mm-hmm. And then it was like in the fourth quarter, all right, enough of that nonsense. I'm taking the ball, and I'm going to win the game for us.
Yeah.
And they went on an 18-2 run in the fourth quarter where they finally just pulled away. And remember, this is a Miami Heat team that's basically missing 5 guys. They don't have their top guys. They don't have Bradley Beal. They don't have Jimmy Butler. They don't have 3 of their main players. I mean, so this was I want to put this all in perspective. Yeah, it was a fine to sweep them twice, and you did it in 2 different ways. And Kevin Durant was talking about the Nets' defense last night. I also think it was the fact that Miami couldn't hit a shot either.
Yeah, right.
So it was a little bit of both things, but
again, we've been criticizing the Nets for no defense, and actually last night was one of those games that wasn't in the 140, so you give him credit for that.
I was just thinking about, what was I thinking about when the game was over, and who was the man? Who was the guy that was the impetus for them to win in the fourth quarter? And I think they played down to their opponents, especially with Jimmy Butler and Bradley Beal not on the
Bradley
court.
Beal's not on the court.
I mean, it was the other guy that they were missing last night. I keep saying Bradley Beal. It's the other guy. I'll get it in a second. But anyway, they're missing 2 of their main guys.
Right.
And it's unfortunate for the Nets that they played down to that in the first half, but there is no question that when James Harden wants to play and wants to take over a game, he could do it.
Yeah, and he is someone that we've seen this from the regular season, James Harden, the version of James Harden, many, many times. And there was the one year, a couple years ago, was the year that ended up in that postseason loss to the San Antonio Spurs, where I thought he was the MVP. The question is, can he do it in the highest pressure situations in the postseason? And it's going to help a hell of a lot to have more talent around him than he's ever had. But I just have to be fair. Obviously, I'm not rooting for success with this group that has been well documented. Both me and you don't necessarily want this thing to work out. But James Harden could have come here and continued to be a pain in the ass, and he hasn't been. I mean, he basically just forced his way out because he didn't want to be there any longer. He acted like a total jerk to get traded. He got traded where he wanted to be, and he has turned it on. And he's also, as you mentioned, it hasn't been all about him. It hasn't been all selfishness. I mean, it's triple-doubles all over the place. First half last night, as you mentioned, he's passing the ball everywhere. So, I mean, that to me is the most dangerous part of the Nets is when James Harden and Kevin Durant are playing at their highest level. And I don't know if the Kyrie Irving part of that really fits in. Now, Kyrie's still as talented of a guy as out there. I mean, it's incredible. And he's also hit one of the biggest shots in recent NBA history when the Cavs beat the Warriors and came back from 3-1.
I was talking about Tyler Hero.
Tyler Hero, yes.
That's what I was talking about.
Tyler Hero, young guy, Instagram model girlfriend named Katya Elise Henry.
Oh, yes.
Made a lot of noise there when he started dating her. Yes, Tyler Hero out with Jimmy Butler last night. But, yeah, so you've got a team now that is still trying to figure it out, and I think they're kind of experimenting in this regular season, too, to figure out exactly what they're going to look like in the postseason and what version of James Harden's going to be needed, what version of Kevin Durant, what version of Kyrie Irving. It'll still be, even though it's not my team and I want them to lose, it'll still be fascinating to watch how it all shakes out.
Well, to me, it seems like James Harden has fit in perfectly. He hasn't done anything that you could say. Like, even watched him last night. Again, like, he was unselfish in the first half and then almost felt like, I have to take over the game so we win it in the fourth quarter. And there's no question about that that was the case. You could talk about defense all you want because that's what we'll talk about as they get into the playoffs and they really do start playing defense. But I think also Miami just wasn't hitting shots. That's the other thing. When you have guys wide open, like Kyrie Irving did not shoot well last night. Kevin Durant did not shoot well last night. And then when they needed something, look, this is going to be interesting. They got to add a couple more players yet. They're still short on the bench.
Yeah, I know, and it's going to have to be a big somewhere, somehow. They're going to have to add a little defense in the middle. They cannot continue to be as exposed as they are down there. I'm not sure exactly who that guy is going to be and where it's going to come from, but that's what Sean Marks needs to do. I mean, a more defensive-minded big for this team that, of course, isn't going to crush them on the offensive end, but it has to be defense-first guy. You got enough offense for days. I mean, you got three of the most talented scorers that the league has ever seen, so you don't need to add any more of that. You got Joe Harris as the guy that's going to be open most of the time when all the attention is on those superstars, and he'll be nailing those threes. You know exactly what the Nets need to do to be able to get better. It's going to be defense. It's going to be a defensive presence. So another win for them. James Harden looks great. I wish I could continue to say that James Harden is one of the most unlikable players in basketball, but he has said the right stuff. He has played great. There's nothing about his tenure as a Net to this point that you can criticize. I mean, it's true, though. I mean, I just want to be fair. I mean, what can you say negatively about James Harden's tenure as a Net since he's come here?
Yeah, it's usually like when teams make trades for guys like this, there's usually an adjustment period. I mean, they just gave him the basketball to go out there and go play, and he's done everything that he did in Houston, and maybe even a little bit more because last night you would think that it wouldn't have to be such heavy lifting for him because of the other guys that he's playing with. But last night was his night, especially in the fourth quarter. So that's good for him. The other thing that I was thinking about, I don't know if you saw this story yesterday. I did not know this. Nobody knew this until somehow, some way, Tom Brady Sr., Tom's dad, came out and told the world that for the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, he and his wife were extremely sick with COVID-19. And Tom's dad was actually in the hospital. And then you think back to the beginning of the year and all the different chatter around Bruce Arians and Tom Brady and what was going on. Can you remember that?
Of course.
And how it was like,
it wasn't that long ago.
Is it not going to work? I mean, sometimes people forget because things happen so fast.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was all Bruce Arians was criticizing Brady, and then was it going to work? And, you're jamming this offensive system down Tom Brady's throat. It's not working, and he's a guy that doesn't throw the ball down the field, and that's all Arians wants to do. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of negative talk around.
Right, so his mom and dad have never missed one of his games, and his dad goes on to recount how he was so sick he didn't even care that his son was playing the first 2 weeks of the season. And so imagine just the burden of trying to play on a new team, new players, new situation, all the pressure of playing quarterback in the NFL, and then having your parents, at least your dad, in the hospital very sick. His mom was also very sick with COVID, and trying to FaceTime, every single day with your parents in California. Now, his dad basically said, look, my son, wants to be with us, but he also has to show up. He has responsibilities, and we show up. That's how his dad phrased it. Tommy was going to show up for Tampa and be there for Tampa. And I was thinking about how the burden of what that must have been like, and nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, maybe some of the people at Tampa knew about it. Maybe there was rumblings or something in the building. But he kept this whole thing pretty close to the vest because I hadn't heard anything about this until yesterday.
Yeah, generally things like that, whether it's an injury to a player or something that's going on in the life of a player, you'll hear about it once the season ends for that player because they never want it to be a distraction, and they say, okay, now I can talk about it. You go into the offseason. Now, there's one guy in Ben Roethlisberger I talk about all the time that no matter what's going on in his life, if it's negative, he'll just blurt it out. But most guys, usually they'll come out afterwards and be like, something you didn't know about this season for Tom Brady was this. But it came out, and they still have to play the Super Bowl, which was interesting. But, yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine what that is like to deal with something as serious as COVID-19 with your parents who, of course, his parents are older, and he's not in the same state. He can't see them, worrying about that while with everything going on with the team. It's just another one of those things that Tom Brady seemed to figure out that's extremely difficult, which is one of the things that he's best at.
His dad gave an interview with ESPN just talking about it and taking us all through it. And I was just, this explains a lot. It explains a lot at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and speaking of explaining a lot, so we didn't know what Aaron Rodgers was talking about at the end of the NFC Championship game.
Cryptic messaging.
Yeah, about the whole, people's futures are up in the air and, even mine. And we said, wait a second. I even got a little excited. I was like, does he want out of Green Bay? Does he not like Matt LaFleur? Does this whole Jordan Love thing bother him? Is maybe he on the way out like Matt Stafford and others? And then we come to find out that he just wants more money and a new contract. So there you go. So he's not going anywhere. He's just playing the cards right after the game. He's going to put a little pressure on him. Packer fans freak out. Not only did they lose the NFC Championship game again, but also Aaron Rodgers maybe going elsewhere or thinking about retirement or whatever. All he wants is more money. So he'll get his more money. He'll be there in Green Bay, and this thing will continue to churn like it has for the last 20 years.
Well, they're going to need to do something with him because he's going to be $31 million on the salary cap, but not all of that money goes into his pocket. He's going to make about $22 million. So when you look at the amount of money that he's making and you compare it to some of the top guys, he has been surpassed numerous times by numerous players. This is one of the reasons why he wants more money, and I don't blame him. I mean, he is the MVP of the league. He is the face of that franchise. It's unfortunate that what happened to them this past weekend will not kind of like just absolutely make this season a total success for him and his teammates, but he wants more money. That's what it comes down to. Deshaun Watson, more and more I'm hearing, the more and more he wants out. So the Jets are in play. Miami is in play, and both of those teams should be in play, and probably the only two teams that could realistically make a trade for Deshaun Watson, maybe San Francisco, but I think because Deshaun has a no-trade clause in his contract, he can basically go to Houston and say, I want out. Now, he personally has not said that. All the stuff that is happening is around people who represent him, people who know him, people who play with him, that kind of thing. So there's smoke, there's fire, there's no question about it. The question really comes down to, do the Jets and the Dolphins, do they believe in their young quarterbacks compared to Deshaun Watson? I would answer a strong no, they don't. They want Deshaun Watson. He's offense in a bottle, and he's ready to roll, and he'll put up 35 touchdowns for you tomorrow, even with the lack of players around him here in New York. He'll just raise everybody's level, much like he did down in Houston. There's no question about that. But he does, this is going to be really interesting to see whether or not the Jets and the Dolphins are going to go all in for this. The Jets have a little bit more draft capital than the Dolphins in terms of picks over the next 2 years. But obviously the Dolphins have a high pick this year as well, but the Jets have the higher pick. But as you look down their draft list, the Dolphins have just as much, if not a little bit better, early picks than the Jets have. So who knows what Houston would want, but they could certainly replenish their entire team, it seems like, if one of these teams are desperate enough to go after Deshaun Watson.
What makes this deal attractive from a Jets perspective, outside of the fact that Deshaun Watson's going to be your starting quarterback, is you have 2 picks this year in the first round and 2 picks next year in the first round, so you don't feel like you're going through multiple drafts without first-round draft choices. I mean, and I've been fans of teams, like the Knicks for years not having a first-round draft choice. We watched that happen to the Nets as well in basketball. When football teams like the Chicago Bears, when they got Khalil Mack and they had to trade a couple of first-round picks, and then they went through a number of drafts without a first-round draft choice. The Steelers this past year, because they traded for Minka Fitzpatrick, and you get to the draft and you're like, oh, wow, that's right, we don't have a first-round pick. I mean, the Jets can make a big deal like this and then still have a first-round pick. The one thing that I can see holding all of this up, though, is the relationship that is sparked in the beginning between whoever the new head coach is and Deshaun Watson. Now, it's down to Leslie Frazier and Eric Bieniemy. I saw Leslie Frazier coach my team. He's a wonderful guy. He's a nice guy. He's got a great reputation and resume. He had a really bad quarterback there in Christian Ponder, and they went to the playoffs one year. They had 10 wins. They ended up losing the wild card round. The other 2 years he was there were miserable. They ended up moving on and going with Mike Zimmer.
I'm sure he's learned, though.
Yeah, but I remember him, right, and I'm not saying he shouldn't get another job. I'm just saying it's not like, Leslie Frazier's coming in as a head coach, having gone to the playoffs 5 out of 6 years. And Eric Bieniemy is the other name that the Texans are. They weren't going to interview him. Now they have interviewed him. They're going to continue to look at Eric Bieniemy. So does Leslie Frazier or Eric Bieniemy talk to Deshaun Watson, and then all of a sudden that is sparked in Deshaun Watson? Like, I really want to stay here. I mean, does Eric Bieniemy have all these ideas offensively that he's bringing over from Kansas City that he throws Deshaun Watson's way, and he goes, oh, hold on a second, this is a different story now?
Well, here's the problem. Deshaun Watson does like his offense coordinator that he has had there, and he would like to keep him too. You know, that wouldn't be a bad thing for Deshaun Watson, but according to pretty much every NFL insider, from the NFL Network guys to Jason Luck-and-Ford to Adam Schefter and everybody else,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So it looks like he wants to move on and move out. And there are a number of ex-Texans that are saying that that's exactly what he should do. He should force himself out. That's another thing. But he has not uttered those words. I haven't heard that we're going to part amicably like they did in Detroit with Matthew Stafford to kind of just calm the waters, and everybody will stay down and let the team now go out there and try to auction off Matthew Stafford and see if they can get a big haul for that 33-year-old quarterback. But, if it's going to be the Jets or the Dolphins, I mean, if you are the Jets, you cannot allow Deshaun Watson to go play for the Dolphins. You can't.
No, I'm with you on that.
So that means you got Josh Allen and Deshaun Watson in your division?
Well, also the Dolphins are probably thinking the same thing. Like, we can't let him go to the Jets.
Exactly.
So
that's why Houston's sitting in the catbird seat. If they can convince their fans that, not to have like a revolt on Nick Caserio's decision here.
Yeah.
I mean, because... So Houston's a mess, salary cap wise. This will lessen that burden. That's a good thing for them. They have no draft picks to speak of.
This would help too.
This would definitely help. They also, if they do make a trade with either the Jets or the Dolphins, they could acquire a young quarterback in either Sam Darnold or Tua Tagovailoa, or one of those draft picks at the top of the draft will let them go draft the quarterback that they want coming out of college. And that means the Jets or the Dolphins could trade either Sam Darnold or Tua Tagovailoa to somebody else.
And then you instantly
get more draft picks back.
Right, yes.
So this whole draft haul for the Jets goes back to the Jamal Adams trade. And this is how you use draft capital if you can make it happen.
And if we would have said at the time, do you trade Jamal Adams for Deshaun Watson?
Yes.
Everybody says yes.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.